All right, everybody. Well, hey, welcome to the Monday night on the Monday Note. We are glad to have you guys, whether it's good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Excited to have you guys all here. We are coming live to you to our some 110 plus countries across the world. We did some analytics this weekend with Chase Thompson here for the virtual note buying for dummies, and we have people that have watched us in over 110 countries across the world. So it's really exciting on that. Didn't realize that, but it is what it is. So definitely fun. So I'm not too multilingual. Habla un poquito español and a lot of English. But glad to have you guys here. As always, these are being recorded. This is being recorded. So if you guys have to step out or miss out, you can catch the replay at our on YouTube and also on our Vimeo channel as well, which will have that link available for you guys. I know you guys are going to want to take some notes on tonight, so I know that people are already asking questions about this, and yes, relax. Don't spaz out before we get started on the topic. Always cracks me up. People all worried about getting their big girl panties and big boy underwear in a wedgie before we get rocking and rolling. So anyway, as always, guys, connect with me online. We've got a whole variety of ways to connect with us: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Google+, the little Tweety bird. You can always find me by searching for @OneScottCarson or OneScottCarson. Along with that, on YouTube and on Vimeo, you can search for We Close Notes, and you'll find our some 180, 200, 300 plus videos across the internet for you guys to download and watch and review and go from there. So, got a lot of stuff going on, everybody. We had a very, very busy weekend here in Austin, Texas. Pull up my webcam here so you guys can see me here, okay? Great virtual note buying for dummies workshop. Want to thank the 100 plus that were on it for 3 days. Big shout out to Chase Thompson, as always, for helping produce that and make it successful. For those that were on it, the replay should be available come Wednesday or Thursday, as we expected. But we are glad to hear new people that are on here. Really great to have all of you guys taking advantage and learning a lot of stuff that's going on in the note industry. As always, we do have a variety. I know quite a few guys and gals on the call are coming from our note closures meetup groups that are currently in the red stars there. We are expanding that, though. We're in 21 different markets right now with different local meetup groups, and we look to expand that here in the next 2 weeks to over 40. And so on some of these are already open, like the Portland group is already open. We're opening up a bunch more as we go. The idea, obviously, everybody, is to help provide local networks for you guys to be able to tap into as far as not only investors and fellow note investors, but also as we have deals coming that hitch those markets, you'll be able to either pick them up or connect in with these groups and link up with vendors that will help you take your note business to the next level. So I want to thank you guys that are part of our meetup group who are joining us maybe for the first or second time on the call this Monday note. But we also have a lot of people who have been asking for more groups, and so this is just kind of the plan of action for you, so you guys can see that obviously a huge amount of networking available for you guys to take advantage of. And then also, we do have WeCloseNotes.com, our main website, actually in the process of being overhauled. It will be looking dramatically different here in the next couple of weeks. I'm excited about some of the changes coming to that. Just really jacked up. A lot of good stuff has been going on, and so it's been a busy couple of weeks. We've still got a few busy weeks ahead of us here, kind of halfway through a 6-weekend event series going on for the most part. We are literally coming to a variety of cities here and excited about it. Yeah, I get excited about great little marketing things that work out pretty well. So for those of you guys that are looking to connect with us, we've got a couple different things that are going on as far as event-wise. I'll actually be heading back to Houston tomorrow to be speaking at the Houston Real Estate Happy Hour taking place at the Wakefield Crowbar from 7 to 9 o'clock. I get a big shout-out to Curtis Warden and Clay Calhoun who put this together. It's a regularly occurring event there for those of you guys that are in Houston. Happens every Tuesday night, and they usually get about 200 plus people out at the Wakefield Crowbar. And I'm being told that it's ribeye night tomorrow night there. So get there early to connect. Nate Hare will be also one of the guest speakers tomorrow night there. It's just be basically 4 of us guys lounging around having a good time. Very similar to our Hump Day happy hours. I got a question pop up. How did I make that video? I did not make that video. I paid like $30 on Fiverr.com for that video as a gig. I thought it was pretty cool myself. I have been giggling all day about that little Fiverr video that we put together and customized. So the beauty of Fiverr.com. It makes me look a whole lot more intelligent when it comes down to events. Also, if you're going to be around in Houston or you listen to the radio at roughly 9 to 10 o'clock Central on Wednesday morning, I'll be joining 2 of my buddies, Jason Bible and Tom Perry, on the Right Path Real Estate Radio. You can join them online. You can go to business1110ktek.com and join us. I'll be sending an email out. There's actually an email reminder going out first thing Wednesday morning regarding that. Jason Bible and Tom Perry are partners at HoustonHouseBuyers.com, who have bought over 200-plus properties in the last 2 years. Great friends. They're also been through the Note Buying for Dummies workshop, looking at getting some notes. But they just do a great job there in the Houston market, and so they've got a regular everyday radio show that goes on from 9 to 10 a.m. So we're going to have some fun stuff we'll be talking about Wednesday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. Central Time. You can join in online, catch it there, live stream it if you want to. Yeah, Fiverr.com, Fiverr.com. Is this it? I don't get what Vince is talking about. Anyway, we'll get to it in here in a second. Also, guys, a couple other events that we're going to. Fast Track Training actually is sold out. It kicks off Thursday, Friday, Saturday. For those of you guys that are out in Orlando, you may want to check out Chris McClatchy's Millionaire Mastery event taking place March 31st through April 2nd. Got Duncan Weirman and a few others coming out to speak note investing and real estate investing and marketing. A whole variety of great real estate stuff there in Orlando, Florida. If you'd like a link to that, and get you, I think tickets are like $149 still. But I'll be speaking on notes there on a panel on Thursday. For some of you guys that are Lawful and Associates clients, they have their next Millionaire Secrets of Entities using an S Corp or using a corporation or LLC taking place the 1st and 2nd out in Reno, Nevada. They've got a few seats still left available. I think they're $1,000 a ticket, but it's literally one of the best events I've ever been to. Really high net worth clients, and they're working for Laughlin, or working with Laughlin, not for. And just it's always nice when you're in a very highly educated room to be able to sit back and hear what other questions are being asked and questions that you don't think of, or questions from somebody you know who's got $20 to $50 million and the questions they're asking about structuring and entities and things like that. So I'll be speaking of this one. I went a few months ago for the first time to sit through and learn, and was just blown away about some of the stuff that I learned there. So definitely interested there to be part of that. Megan Cole, who runs that for Aaron Young, is doing an amazing job, and it's almost sold out. I think they only have like 4 seats left available. After that, we have the Note Mastermind. Those of you guys that are part of the Mastermind group here in Austin, Texas, April 15th to the 17th, of Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Some of the fun things we've got coming in. We've got a major hedge fund coming in to talk about note pool financing. We've got a servicing company coming in to talk about some of the cool things going on. We've got a really excited, a couple special guests that I'm not going to share on the front end, but somebody that's tapped directly into HUD, FHA, going to share with us kind of what's going on, the heartbeat of the industry, and really provide some great stuff. We're also bringing in a nonprofit company who has portfolios that they're buying first off from HUD and Fannie Mae, and they're looking for JV partners. So we're really excited to tap into those sources for everybody that's coming out to the Note Mastermind April 15th through 17th. Last but not least, Wednesday night, we do have the Hump Day Happy Hour special guests. If you miss the Right Path Real Estate, we'll be having Jason and Tom on there as our special guests Wednesday night. But anyway, beyond that, guys, beyond all the stuff, different events you got, they're going over the next month, we have the Monday note for you guys for content, for questions. My phone is blowing up here as people are texting me questions. We'll get to those shortly. Any questions about any of the events before we dive into the main content tonight for you guys and gals? Glad you guys are all on call. A great number of RSVPs for tonight's call, and I guarantee everybody in every state will get something out of tonight's call. Well, let's dive right on in then, everybody. So, tonight's special guest on the Monday note. Oh, actually, yes, I want you to be a note investor. If you guys are looking for the replay link for previous Monday notes, there's the link. As is in correct case, so you do upper or lowercase, the Monday note, bit.ly/the Monday note. All the 40-plus hours, I think it's 45-plus hours of videos for the Monday notes for you guys to tap into and download for you. All right, back to tonight's special guest. Our special guest, Scott Royal Smith, has been a buddy of mine for a while. He's a licensed real estate attorney here in Texas. He's a Series LLC expert, which I'm sure many of you are interested in finding more information out. He's also originally went to law school up in Albany, New York, at the Union University School of Law. And there's my buddy Scott there. Are you on the call, Scott? Are you still out in out in the West area having fun on dirt bikes and adventure sports today? What's up, man?
Yeah, man, I'm here. I'm excited to be with you guys. I'm just got done yesterday doing a 300-foot rappel off the side of a cliff in Zion National Park. And today I've put together some time to talk with you guys a little bit about how you can structure everything to protect yourself in your note investments.
Yeah. And first, I got to give a lot of credit to Scott for fitting us in, because he was actually slated to be like a week later, and then the regular person we were supposed to have on actually flaked. So, Scott, thank you for taking time during your vacation to put a few slides together and take time out of your busy week and weekend of having fun to join us. So what I'm going to do here now, you should see on your screen where I make you the presenter. A bunch of pop-up that says, there you go.
Okay, show my screen.
Yep, show your screen. There you go. You may want to go ahead and that's perfect there, buddy. Seamless, man. You're a pro at this.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
All right. Yeah, well, anything for you, Scott. I knew Scott when I first went to in Austin. He had a presentation in a hotel room with a bunch of real estate investors that I knew. And I was really impressed with the work that he was doing with all of the note investors there. So me and him have been in contact ever since, and working with him on at that time, and what I still do is structuring asset holding companies for the people that are holding hard assets. You guys are what we consider holding a soft asset instead of holding the note itself. But many of the same principles still apply. But just a little background on who I am so you guys can get a better feel for me. I've spent the last 3 years of my life focusing exclusively on litigation and asset protection. It's two sides of the same coin. One is how to, basically legally steal somebody else's money, and the other side is how do you keep somebody from being able to steal your money vis-a-vis a lawsuit. And then part of that, what it's been is be specializing to inside of the real estate particular type holdings, right? Either with notes or with working with the hard assets themselves. And in that, I've also, become a continuing education instructor with the Austin Board of Realtors. We got to do a really fun presentation to get selected for that in front of 15 people from the entire board sitting down and doing a presentation, much like I'm doing with y'all today, but all in front of them. I don't know if you guys have ever had the pleasure of doing one of those, but it's quite the experience if you're looking to see what can rattle your nerves. And yeah, that was pretty great. And recently, within the last year or so, I've been delving more and more with doing fund structuring, as well as getting more creative with different type of joint venture agreements. And I'm currently in the process of starting up my own investment firm right now. So just to give you a little bit of background about me, so you can kind of know who is you're talking to and why should we listen to them. And one of the things that I found working with Scott is that, man, you guys are in a great business. The note business is something I love. It's when you can have something where you just get to be able to control a piece of paper and be able to collect money off of it. It's so much better than holding a hard asset, isn't it? You don't have to deal with the ownership of the property, the upkeep, having insurance, having slip and fall. Incidents happen that cause you liability. From a liability perspective, notes are phenomenal. But they're not foolproof, right? I mean, you're going to have liability coming into the notes, right? I mean, Scott, have you ever run into a situation where you're unsure about a particular foreclosure that you're doing or some other type of legal action with a property?
Oh, all the time. I'm on a portfolio right now where we're making some offers and some stuff in Florida, and we're looking at the records and things like that. It's kind of interesting to see. We're going to have an attorney in Florida review everything on the foreclosure trial because it's definitely a weird thing. It's not cookie cutter. Plus, we also run into a lot of statute of limitations issues since we're buying notes that haven't been paid in 4 or 5 years. So yeah, there's all sorts of little different things popping up. So
and what do your attorneys tell you when they say, what happens if you were to foreclose on an asset and you were wrong? You did something incorrectly, and then you sell somebody's house out from underneath them when you didn't have the legal capacity to do so.
You're lucky I have not had that happen.
Yeah, very lucky.
But it does happen occasionally, especially we've had that happen with some contract for deeds that the title issues weren't cleared up prior to them, selling it contract for deed. And, somebody gets upset because, they come back, hey, I own this property. What the hell is up, So
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's usually, you can have it happen in a lot of different ways. You'd be surprised that even doing in the foreclosures, and we'll get down to this a little bit down the road here about when the sale of the asset or the acquisition of the asset occurs, is that even an improper notice, being one day off, and when you notice a property that you're going to foreclose on it versus the time you actually foreclose, gives liability to a suit for wrongful foreclosure, which in Texas, like many states, allows for triple damages and punitive damages that can go on top of that. So the amount of liability that you can acquire in these types of legal proceedings can be vast. And just very small technicalities can result in big damages. So to really kind of backtrack us here is the three times that we're going to have liability in this type of business is either at the purchase, while we're actually holding the note, or at the sale of the note from one person to the other. And so during the purchase, as we mentioned before, is that you could have a previous wrongful foreclosure. So let's say that my buddy Brian foreclosed on a property, right? And then he turns around and he sells me that particular piece of property, or drafts a new note on that he refinances with the individual to do like a loan modification or something like that. The post-foreclosure sale, if you're talking about a hard asset, or in the later asset, if we're talking about a note, that was in violation of Dodd-Frank, meaning that some of the note terms could be off, like too high of interest rates, the repayment terms aren't correct, in compliance with Dodd-Frank. All of those types of liability would pass to me because I would be then the current note holder. So we have liability that occurs at the front end of all of these transactions. To say that whatever we're purchasing, whoever we're acquiring, the liability extends not just because I trust Brian, but it's actually whoever Brian bought it from and the deal that they negotiated that now I'm acquiring. So in the case of a hard asset, what can happen is that person could come back and sue for the property, what's called redemption or redemption, to actually sue to get their property back, and you're liable for damages as the current holder of the property. Inside of a note context, let's say that Brian were to do a seller finance note with them, and so he's going to hold the note, and then he sells the note to me. But that note happened to have a 35% interest rate on it that was due in a balloon payment within inside of 2 years. Well, that's obviously in violation of Dodd-Frank rules, because then I'm the note holder because I bought it from Brian. Now I'm in violation of Dodd-Frank, and now I'm the one that's out because the note will be voided.
Right.
So those are the types of issues that you have to come up to, and it's really important as a note investor, I think, to get familiar with what are you actually doing and the front end, and what are actually those rules like. And unfortunately, talking to attorneys especially about things with Dodd-Frank, the rules aren't 100% clear. Have you found that to be the case, Scott? Have you found any attorney that's really going to give you a definitive answer about all the details around that 2,000-page document?
Nope.
No, right? So we don't actually. It's impossible for us to really know if we're really even violating the law, which doesn't really seem fair. So in that sense, we have to mitigate risk. And as I'm going to touch on later, and the thing I'm going to talk to you guys about at the end of this is how do we actually mitigate the risk through different types of business structures? Because we don't want to have this type of open-ended liability to all of our assets. So the second time we're going to have liability here is during the holding period. So let's say that Mr. Carson over here has his he has his $2 million in notes that he owns or more. I don't know how well Scott's doing, but I'd assume so. But let's say that he gets in a car wreck, and it exceeds the liability of his insurance. Let's say he only has Texas minimums. What is that? 35, 50,000, something like that. So, but let's say it's it's a wrongful death thing, and it's $2 million that he gets sued for. But what that means is, because he exceeded his insurance, which he thought protected him, now that they're able to come after him personally, Remember, he's the owner because he bought all those notes in his name. That he's the owner of all those notes. So now the attorney, what they're able to do is go in and seize all of those assets by court order. That's what I talk about. It's legally stealing from you, in a sense, that they can come in and seize all of that from you. And the bad part about it is that all of this happens at the time of the accident. He's completely out of luck because you can't transfer the assets after you know you're going to get sued, or you have reason to believe you're going to get sued, which you know is going to happen after you get into a car accident. So it's already too late. The bell's been rung at that point. If we don't have the structures in place ahead of time, we have no shot about being able to save any of those assets or otherwise hide them. Now, you'll actually find some really cool stories, Scott, that I think you'll like, is that a couple of these guys, what they tried to do is take all the money, liquidate all of it, and then shipped it off into the Cayman Islands. Have you ever heard of people doing that before to try to shelter assets?
Yeah.
So they tried to tell the judge, hey, judge, I can't make it. There's a trustee that's out there in the Cayman Islands over this money. I can't force the trustee to give the money back here to the States. Right? Because it's like, okay, well, it's actually the trustee. It's not me, so the judge can't really blame me, right? Mm-hmm. Well, what the judge did, he said, I don't really have another option, so what I'm going to do is just put you in contempt of court and throw you in jail until the money gets released, which you can do indefinitely. It's amazing. So there's not really games you can play with this, guys. I mean, there's not really any legal tricks on the back end, and this is why it's important that we have everything set up right on the front end. And it's really easy to do with the Series LLC. We're able to make those assets where if you got into that car wreck and you're in that position that somebody isn't going to be able to touch those assets. And if you had a wrongful foreclosure with one note, it doesn't mean that they're going to be able to get access to all the other notes. It's a beautiful, beautiful system. So, and also what happens with the sale of the note. So in the last part of it is, let's say that, my friend Brian wants to go ahead and sell me a note, but, perhaps he made other representations regarding the note. Now, this is a guy that always pays on time. He just told me that he won, the lottery over here, so he's going to have no problem paying off this note, or that, the condition of this property for the underlying asset, it's always in excellent condition. There's no termites. Okay, but it actually turns out there are termites on the property, right? Or it actually turns out the guy didn't really win the lottery at all. Those would all be fraud in that sense. So now I would have a lawsuit against Brian for fraud. Now, how could this happen in something that would say that's not somebody actually intentionally deceiving you? Because we'd say, hey, we're all pretty honest people, and generally speaking, and most people I do business with, it's very, very rare that I have anybody that I find does anything intentionally fraudulent.
Right.
But say that, say something simple happened, say, in this property, they actually replaced all of the plumbing underneath the house. Right?
Well, I got a story for you.
Yeah.
I got a story. Yeah. There's a guy working for a hedge fund who was fraudulently selling assets he didn't have to sell. And so what he was doing was literally taking investors' money and supposedly selling them on an asset and never delivering anything. And not cool. This has just recently happened about 6 months ago. And took basically about $1.5 million in investor money and is running off with it. It's kind of it rarely happens. I mean, most people, it's legitimate. This guy used to work for a legitimate fund. Of course, his fund fired him, but he was doing this off the books as a subset. And, breaching contracts that he was writing, a whole kit and caboodle for the fund that he was technically representing. You know what I mean? Does that help in any way?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that's some serious fraud right there.
Yeah.
What I was driving at is saying that, even when I sell it, like let's say I were to sell you a note, Scott, I mean, the way I could defraud you in a lot of different ways. If I just told you that, say, hey, we replaced all the plumbing in this house, and it turned out, I said all of the plumbing, but I only meant underneath the house. We could have just a misinterpretation of what we were talking about.
Yeah.
About because I wrote it in an email, now there's a written document that's confusing. Great. Now I have a lawsuit for fraud, and it could be something that's completely unintentional. And just as splicing the words.
Right.
So it's, and of course, you also have all the basic things. Let's say that I want to enter into a contract to purchase a note from you. And what happens if I decide I want to back out of that? Well, that could be breach of contract, and that's depending on how far along the process we got. How do you protect yourself against that? Well, the way you do it is with the Series LLC or the Delaware Statutory Trust if you have California-based assets. What these structures are designed to do is to make you personally judgment-proof. Right? So now let's say that I have a Series LLC structured for you, Scott. What my advice to you as a client is going to be, let's take all of your assets, your entire worth, and let's dump it into this Series LLC. And we're going to chop it all up inside of the Series LLC. So that way, Scott Carson doesn't own anything. So if anybody has a lawsuit or they say, Scott defrauded me or Scott did anything, that's great. I'm happy for them to sue Scott Carson because I know that Scott Carson has no assets to collect against, which means that the lawsuit's not going to go anywhere. Because people only maintain lawsuits when they think they can get a payoff. In this sense, there's no payoff, i.e. lawsuit gets dropped. And so you're 100% protected just because you're not worth suing at that point.
So you're basically stating, explain that a little bit more, Scott, about how you're transferring it from, let's say, we'll say I got one pool of 25 assets. Do I want to take each asset and put it in a different series inside the Series LLC, or do you want to explain how each series kind of works so that those that are following along that are kind of new to this have a better feeling for it?
Yeah, go ahead and pop over here to the sample series with names is the slide I currently have up. What you're going to see is at the very top of this is the Sample Asset Holding Company, LLC, Sample Asset Holding, LLC, Series A, and the 123 Main Street Trust, which is going to be the asset itself. The asset itself is going to be held inside of the trust. So each one of these, the series, so let's say we had now a new property or a new note. The second note would be in Series B. And it's inside of its own, like 456 Prosperity Lane Trust. Sure. And let's say the third note would be in Series C, underneath a new trust name, right? So the reason that we do that inside of the series structure, if you want to think about it, is that a Series LLC is a parent-child relationship. As a parent, it's a parent Series LLC, and this parent can have as many children as it wants. And each child is called its own series. You'll have Series A, Series B, Series C, Series D, etc. You can have as many as you want. The important part about the Series LLC is that you have one tax return, and it's one company. But what the series structure allows you to do is to chop up each individual asset as if it were owned in its own LLC. Because Series A is treated for liability purposes as its own LLC. So if there's a lawsuit regarding the asset, the 123 Main Street note, that note that's held there, they can only get to the assets of Series A, which is only that note. They can't get to the assets of Series B, Series C, Series D, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So in that way, you're able to limit your liability because you limit the pool that they have to be able to sue. And because it's inside of the company, they won't be able to sue you. They're only able to sue the person that they had any dealings with, which is the series itself. So that isolates you, your liability, and you only have a small asset that's in there. And we think about litigation is going to cost us usually around $15,000 to $20,000 in attorney's fees to have a shot about being able to recover. Well, it's unlikely that somebody is going to take that big of a gamble unless there's a big payoff. And because we only have one asset in that series, the payoff isn't there. Does that make sense? Do we need to go over that? Can we add any clarification on that?
Anybody have any questions regarding that for the most part? So you're basically going back to this. You've got the management trust that you're using for filing. You got the LLC, the main LLC, the parent LLC, and then the kid LLCs could have as many kids as they want, whether they're on. There is no birth control for a Series LLC, basically.
That's right. We have a right to life with LLCs, that's for sure. So
if somebody, as you trying to avoid people looking for you and stuff like that, so are you the agent on the trust there, on the far left there in the blue oval? If it's going to be Scott Carson's LLC, would that be Scott Carson on there, or an agent like you, or an attorney, or somebody else to help eliminate that as far as them being able to foreclose on there? Is that just a holding company?
Sure. So our holding company, just to kind of backtrack for a second, is our holding company is separate from our operations.
Okay.
I know this isn't an answer to your question, Scott, but I'll just go through it here real quick.
That's fine.
So our holding company is separate from our operations. Our operations company is the one that actually does the business dealing itself. It's the one that's signing any contracts. It's going to be the servicing entity. Anything that we're going to do that's going to touch the outside world, that's in our operating company, a completely separate LLC. Or it could be ourselves individually if we are short on money and we don't want to put up the legal structure. But ideally, it's a separate LLC, completely separate. Now we have our second piece is the structure that you can see right now on the screen. This is our asset holding company. And this is an asset holding company that's structured to be completely anonymous. So you can see up at the top is that there's a sample asset holding LLC, and to the left of it, it's a sample asset holding agent trust, right? What that does is that's the filing trust for the state of Texas or whatever state you're going to work with. So when anybody were ever look up, who does this LLC actually belong to, they would get met with this blind trust. And there's no name connected to it that they can research. And why is that important? It's because we want to eliminate our name from anything that has to do with our asset holding company, because we don't want our name associated in any way that's searchable, because that's the first thing you do in a lawsuit. You find out, is somebody we're suing? Do they have any money? So if we have our name's not associated with it on the filing, they're not able to identify it as connected to us. And that's what that agent trust is about inside of the filing there at the very top. The Series A is the entity that created as the child. That's like one of those good Catholic children that we're going to have a bunch of because we're going to have a ton of assets, right?
Right.
And then underneath that series, each series will have its own trust.
Yeah.
So the owner on your note, if you would like it to be, can actually be the trust instrument, another blind trust. So in that sense, nobody would be able to know either from reviewing the note itself or from reviewing the company. Because remember, like a lot of these notes have to be registered, right, on state records on who the current holder is.
Yeah.
So what we do is we make a blind trust the holder of the note. So if anybody looks through any of the property records inside of the county clerk, or they look through the Secretary of State to look at, say, who did the company own to, your name doesn't appear on any of those records. So looking to the world looking at you thinks that you're the poorest person in the world and you could have $20 million in assets and be 100% protected by inside of this structure. 100% meaning the maximum level of protection that you can get, which is holding one asset in one LLC. In this case, inside of a series that's treated like an LLC for liability purposes.
That makes sense. Got a couple questions for you. How is this done in California if you live in California, Scott?
Sure. So this is the Delaware Statutory Trust. It's going to allow you to work just like the series LLC that we set up before. It's a type of business trust. It allows for the anonymity. It also allows for estate planning. It can work as your living trust that you would normally use for your estate plan. It allows you the series protections just like you would for the series LLC. And for anybody that cares for other larger scale investments, it also allows for 1031 exchanges in it for hard assets, which really doesn't apply to note investment strategies that I've seen so far, although it could if you had a big enough pool. I'm sorry, no, it couldn't because that doesn't work for 1031. That's why I have it in brackets. So why is it ideal for the California investors? Because in California, what you end up having to do with the Series LLC, if you have any LLC structure that's doing business in California, you're subject to California franchise tax,
right,
which is $800 per year per LLC. And if you use a Series LLC, actually each series is taxed at $800 per year.
Good time.
So California loves to just tax you to the limit. So in that sense, if you're owning California assets, you'll get totally slammed on taxation, which is why you have to go with this more exotic type DST structure, which is more complicated, but has other benefits and as well as some tax savings in there.
Right. But so then that way they're only paying the $800 on the one Delaware statute, the DST only.
No, actually, they're not subject to any tax
underneath
the trust. So you're not. There's no taxation associated with trust instruments in California. Only business entities.
Nice.
So the trust has to be structured properly and managed properly. But if it's done properly, me and my team have developed it, then you actually are not subject to any tax.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a really great tool. Because otherwise, you start getting too many alligators, right, flipping away at you from taxation.
Wow, good stuff. A couple questions here. Sorry. Go ahead, man. Sorry, it looks like you're going with another slide.
No, that's it. Go ahead and hit me with some questions.
All right. So, question here. Let's see. We got a few here. What is the difference between this and an S corp as a holding company that has LLCs structured beneath this?
My question would be: is why are you doing that? There's only two reasons to do. The difference between an LLC and an S corp is that with the LLC, you can actually elect inside of your first tax year whether you want to have it treated as an LLC, you can have it treated as a pass-through entity, or you can elect for the LLC to be treated as an S corp.
Right.
With the LLC, the series LLC, you can spin off all the series. There's no extra cost and no extra filing to create a new series. So you have an infinitely expandable company. You don't have to keep filing all these sub-LLCs, and you get one tax return. So let's say that you have said, oh, but I really want to have the advantages of an S corp for the way that I'm handling all of my taxation, and that's why I'm doing this pyramid structure to get up. Well, that's great, but why not just do a series LLC, elect to have it taxed as an S corp, and have a bunch of free series underneath to have the same level of protection at a fraction of the cost?
So you could literally have one series if you're doing multiple things. Previously, we've done a series LLC for our rentals. I mean, not series, a separate LLC for our rentals, a separate LLC for our notes we're holding long term, and then a separate LLC for our JV deals. In this case,
there's no reason to
combine them all together into one series LLC and have each series handle each business entity, basically.
That's correct, right. And you can do the series structure allows you to modify ownership inside of each series. So if, let's say, in Series D, you want to have some partners inside of the deal, you can go ahead and modify that document. It's a simple one-page document where you spell out, the ownership structure, and it adopts the operating agreement for the master LLC. But yeah, so if everything you're doing is going to be long-term capital gains or pass-through treatment, all you need is one series LLC, and you can launch as many different types of companies or hold any different types of assets as you want to in each different series.
Cool. That's awesome. Now,
yeah,
what's it cost to file every document? Was it $25 with the Secretary of State or the county clerk every time?
There's no filing fee for the series. There's no filing fee, and the document is a one-page document that I make anyway for my investors. It's a one-page document. It's very simple. It takes 5 minutes to modify on your computer, and you have just created a new series LLC that's a full legal entity. Sick, right? Yeah.
And you don't need a separate tax ID for each series. Is that correct?
You don't. You can. Let's say that you're going to do something that you have multiple partners inside of Series D, but all A through C is all you personally. What you do is you just spin off a new EI number for Series D, have that be its own partnership tax return because you have separate partners for there and you want to file a separate return for that. But A through C all funnel up through your main tax return for your series itself. Or if you're an individual member, that series doesn't even have to file any type of complicated return at all because all that income is just going to get passed to you individually as, on your personal income tax return. So you end up having some tax savings for preparation there as well.
Right. So we got another question here from Jeff. Can an SC Corp own a Series LLC? And the answer to that is yes, of course. Correct?
Yeah, it can obviously own it, but my question always is why.
Right.
Like, why would you do it that way? Why not do a Series LLC and have it elected to be taxed as an S corp?
Right. All right. Couple more questions here. If I already have an S corp, do I set up a separate Series LLC to set up a holding company, or if I already have an S corp, do I set up a separate Series? Wait a second. Let's type this in twice. All right. If I already have an S corp, do I set up a separate Series LLC, Scott?
What I would do is you want to have, remember we talked about before about the operations company and separate from the asset holding company? I would use that S corp as your operations company. Separate yourself from any business dealings personally, from anything that you do, and set up a separate Series LLC for all of your asset holding that doesn't interact with anybody, doesn't touch the world.
That's good.
It doesn't do anything that's going to bring liability. That's what you want to do.
Right.
And you can look to. So the great part about like this tax selection, as you guys were talking about before, which is the taxation for the LLCs versus the S corp. you can run your business throughout the first year before your first tax filing, run it by your CPA and have them crunch the numbers both ways. A lot of times I see that if you're making more than $50,000-ish a year off of your companies, a lot of times at that point it makes sense to start getting taxed as an S Corp, because then you're able to start taking you're able to take income differently than just standard income. And that differentiation, the way that you're taking, I think it's dividend income, is that you start taking it through the S Corp, and that's taxed at a lower rate once you start getting into that type of tax bracket for personal income. So, but you don't have to make that. You can go ahead and structure everything now and then run that by your CPA and say, great, run the numbers both ways. What's going to make the most sense for us, but, between our write-offs and our income.
We got a drill there in the background?
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm over here at one of the investment properties we're working at right now, and I kind of got caught. So
That's
sorry
okay.
about that.
It's all right, buddy. It's all right. Not a problem at all. I just didn't think it was your stomach being hungry.
Yeah, no, maybe. I'll get a steak or something after this.
A couple more questions here for you. So
Sure.
Bob asked a question. So if my Delaware state trust is buying notes in California, is it still subject to the 3-note purchase limit that I am personally without being a broker?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would have to research that to be able to find out exactly how that would work underneath that circumstances. I wouldn't want to advise you on that inside of the webcast.
That's not a problem. That makes sense, Scott. We appreciate that. At what time in your career would you entertain this? And that's a good question, Carl. Honestly, if you're diving in and you're making things happen, you're starting to buy assets, it's always better to have things set up in the long run on the front end versus having to go back and try to retransfer. Because once something's recorded in an entity, it's out there. It's public record. So ultimately, I would probably, if you don't have an LLC already, you need to get something set up. And the easiest thing to set up at the front end would be a series LLC, which will handle a lot of your issues going forward. Now, Carl, what state are you in? Will also determine that too, right, Scott? Because not all states recognize a series LLC, correct?
No, see, that's one of the interesting things, right? It's not all states allow you to file a series LLC in their state, right? There's only a handful of states who allow you to do that. There's very, very good reasons to believe that if I file a series LLC in Texas, even though Florida doesn't allow me to create a series LLC in Florida, they'll still recognize the Texas series LLC if it were ever brought up into a Florida court.
That's fine.
And the reason for that is because we have this legal term that's called comity. That means that we generally want to recognize the laws of other states, especially in the United States, because can you imagine the chaos if states started invalidating each other's companies? It would cause havoc. So unless there's so as long as we're following the rules for this, the Florida rules, like Florida will require you to have 2 members that are not related to each other by marriage, right? So if I were going to do a Texas LLC, series LLC, and we're going to do business in Florida, well, let's make sure that we follow the Florida rules to make sure that Florida is going to say, okay, well, this is going to be an LLC that we know is going to be good, even though they're very likely to follow the Texas rules anyway regarding the formation. But we're very confident in the fact that Florida is not going to say, we're not going to even recognize this series LLC.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that we know that, Scott, is because nobody's challenged it in the last 20 years. And if there was a good reason to challenge these structures, litigation attorneys would be all over it. But nobody's invested the money or the time to really challenge them in any serious way.
Right.
And the only challenges we do see to them are the traditional types that you see between multiple LLCs, piercing the corporate veil by using the bank accounts as your personal bank accounts, not keeping track of financing or your finances and your accounting between different types of LLCs and commingling all the funds together. Those are the traditional types of things we see that make LLCs fall apart. Those are the only ways we've seen them attack series LLCs, and you would expect them to do that because that's what was intended, was to be able to create multiple LLCs without having to file. So, of course, the courts are going to treat it that way.
Right. That makes sense. A couple more questions here for you here. Great questions, everybody. I've set up an LLC. How would I change it to a series LLC? Can they do that, or they got to create a new LLC?
Yes, you can change them, and theoretically you can. There's no real cost savings in doing so. So I would typically lean on saying, let's create a new series LLC with the anonymity for your asset holding, because you'd be surprised about how often it is, how great it is as a litigation attorney to be able to walk into an opposing counsel's office, a potential opposing counsel's office, and tell them with a straight face, as that my client doesn't own any assets, because they don't, right? The Series LLC actually owns it, so it's a true statement. And I know that you've not been able to find any assets that they own before you file this suit. And here's why you're going to lose. And those types of things that you arm and give us bullets as litigation attorneys are the things that allow us to shoot down other people's lawsuits.
That makes complete sense. A couple more questions here. All right. Okay. Bob asked a question. Living in Texas, which state would be better to set up a Series LLC? Texas, Nevada, Delaware, or other? Was there?
Texas, Nevada, and Delaware are all on par with each other. They all have the most aggressive asset protection rules. The reason I typically go through Texas is I'm a bar licensed attorney in Texas and New York. And so I'm most familiar with the laws that work in those states.
Yeah.
But I'd say I like Texas also because Texas doesn't have any franchise tax.
Yeah.
So until you get over hundreds of thousands of dollars per year, which is really nice. And you never know what – in Texas, we're the most asset-friendly – one of the most asset-friendly states and cheapest taxes out there. You don't know what's going to happen in those other states.
Yeah. So, Bob, you could actually go in and meet with Scott one-on-one if you want to because Bob lives in Austin here too. All right.
Oh, excellent, Bob. Hope to see you.
Yeah. Okay, so Diana asked a question, does each Series LLC require its own bank account? No, Diana, you don't need to have your own bank account if there's no cash coming through the LLC. If it's just holding an asset, then you can well, I'll let Scott answer that question. You don't really need your own separate account for not having anything going through it, correct?
Right, yeah. You can have any account really hold the assets, hold the cash itself. But the really important part to keep in mind is that each in your accounting software, for like your QuickBooks, it's very important to tag which money belongs to which series, belongs to which note. Right, because we have to treat this as if we were, in a sense, a property management company, and we have all of these. Somebody else owned this company, and we were keeping track of how much money was coming in to each different company.
Right.
But so far as where the pool of money sits, nobody really cares.
Right. Right. So on one particular series, if you have an asset you sell there, can you reuse that series?
Sure, but why would you? It costs you. You could have some issue that in that series that you didn't know about. Like you could have a wrongful foreclosure suit in Series C, and that you might not know about that for years down the road, right? Because we're talking 4-year statute of limitations in the state of Texas for those types of issues. For wrongful foreclosure, maybe it's 3. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, it's years down the road, and why not? It's no cost to spin off Series F and have Series F hold the new note. Because remember, it's a 1-page document. You change out 2 fields, you sign it, and bam, you got a new series. So why take on the extra legal liability?
Right. That makes sense. Questioner, can a person put an IRA in an LLC and use the IRA funds to purchase notes? And I think Bob is talking about a self-directed IRA LLC. You also set those up too, Scott, don't you?
Yeah, I also set those up. And yes, and I recommend that you do that with the Series LLC inside of your IRA. It's a great asset protection tool.
Cool. All right. Let's see here. Does a Series LLC also shield LLCs that are formed for sole proprietors?
Can you hit me with that question again?
Yeah, I'm not. Does a Series LLC also shield LLCs that are formed for sole proprietors? I think it was asked a few minutes ago. I think I'm not quite understanding the question.
Yeah, so I think what he means is a single member LLC, because I'd be a sole proprietor.
Yeah.
Sole proprietorship is actually a type of business entity. It's classified as sole proprietor, meaning just you. An LLC is separate. When we talk about there's only one person inside of an LLC, Texas allows you to do that with one individual. They're going to recognize the LLC as a separate entity from you. That's another good reason to form in Texas.
Right. Okay. Does it make sense to put notes held under 1 year in a trust or just buy it under the operating entity? Well, Scott, I think it makes sense to put it in the series because you never know what's going to happen. People can track down assets or history.
Sure.
So,
well, so we would buy everything through. There's not a whole lot of. I would buy everything through an operating company, right? Your separate company that's out there that's touching the world, right? That's the one that's initially going to buy that asset from somebody because that's where you could have issues with any type of fraud, breach of contract,
right.
Wrongful foreclosure. It's going to, kind of creep on in you. Then you go ahead and buy it from that one, and after that operating company actually purchases the asset, then we go ahead and do an assignment of mortgage into that trust structure, the trust structure that I show you up now, and then we're going to have that in the series and the asset holding company underneath the trust. we're going to put it inside of our asset holding company at that point. Right? But we don't want this asset holding company, ideally, nobody knows about this asset holding company even existing or being connected to us.
That makes sense. All right. Can I have okay, Deborah, yes, you can have one series LLC that's your rental, and then one that has a property and a flip. And how would this impact the taxation of the primary LLC that holds both? You would basically you could either do a separate tax return for both LLCs, or you could run them up into and just report it as income from, the main LLC's income from this one series, and then one income from the other LLC. Correct, Scott? I mean, I'm not an accountant or an attorney.
Yeah, right. And you're not a CPA, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But you're good at making money, baby, and that's all that matters. So she touched on an interesting point, which is what happens when I start having flips. And the interesting point on that is that if you start doing stuff that's long-term capital gains, like we have, assets that we're holding over than a year, and then let's say we also had some flips. If that's all inside of one tax return, you're actually giving IRS the opportunity to classify all of the income from that entity as either short-term or long-term capital gains. So if you're going to be doing a mixed type of income between short-term and long-term capital gains, you should actually separate those into two different tax returns.
Okay.
So, because I don't like to give IRS the option, right, of them being able to decide and me trying to fight them on the back end because it's very expensive.
Yep. And you're not going to beat the IRS. So.
No, it's a lot of money. You better be talking millions before you start fighting them.
Yeah. All right. So, question here. I have a Nevada S corp that is registered to do business in California. We do business in California primarily, but we buy notes outside of California. So would the DST be the better route for our business?
Sure, because I know you're going to get taxed in California. You're $800 per year for doing business inside of it. Mm-hmm. So you're it's really like a cost benefit for you, right? I mean, in the long haul, you have two different things. One is that you have this $800 per year that you're paying for your LLC to be able to do business there. So that's one thing that you're going to be that goes towards the cost of the DST for tax savings. As two, you're not allowed, I can guarantee you that you're not having any type of isolation of your assets. So if anything goes wrong with anything inside of your California-based investments or anywhere, all of them are pulled together. You really need to have the separation of the assets. It's really, that's 85 to 90% of this game is removing the pool of money to make it where you're not worth suing. So if you have one pool of money, no good.
Right. Are series LLCs recognized in Louisiana, do you know?
So far as I know, I haven't ever seen a court invalidate a series LLC in any state.
Okay. Some more questions here. What's the cost for doing a series LLC? Let's get that because people are starting to ask that here.
Oh, sure. So what I do with my firm is I offer an out-the-door price where I take care of all of your series formation, your operating agreements, the filing, help you get the EIN numbers, any type of financing, everything you need to be able to be out the door, up and running with your company. And my fee for that is $1,500, and I charge, and in the state of Texas, charges a $300 filing fee. What I do also on top of that to make it even more attractive is that I give you all of the documents, which no attorney does. And I train you about how to use them. I say, here's the trust documents in Word format. You can modify this as you need to. Here's the series document. You can modify this. And that way you're able to manage all of your company without having to continually pay an attorney each time you want to create a new investment or have a new property or create a new business in this case with the series LLC. You have one cost that's your last cost that you're going to have to pay.
What is a typical attorney cost for a new document on something like that? What's a normal fee on that, Scott?
Usually somewhere around $100 to $150 to be able to compose a trust in a series. I mean, or more, right? I mean, if you look at some of these other guys that are doing anonymity trusts or anonymity LLCs, first of all, there's only a couple of us in the country that even do this type of work with the anonymity structures. But they're usually charged somewhere between $3,000 to $4,000 up to $4,500 is what I've seen in some places in Texas to do the same type of work. And then they're usually want about $300 or so for each transaction that you would do because, they give you everything in PDFs, right? Yeah. So it's completely not usable. You can't use that over and over again. But I'm not in the business of that, of making nickel and diming everybody. I'm in the business of helping people get set up, teach them how to run a company, and let them go.
Yeah, that's one of the best things about having Scott on here, everybody, is if you think about that, the $15 fee plus the documents on that, by the time you do your third or fourth transaction series, he saved you what you pay to set the stuff up. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's awesome. A couple other questions here. Some of these we've already answered. For Canadian residents, I don't know. Do you know of an appropriate structure with an LP or LLLP? Because LLCs are taxed double.
Yep. What you're going to do for the Canadian is I actually have a lot of Canadian investors that I work with. For some reason, Canadian investors love investing in Ohio. I don't know why. It's something about it. But what we do for all the Canadian investors, just real quick, is that we want to structure an LP. For that, you're going to need somebody here in the States to be able to be one of the partner or the member of the general partner, which is usually going to be an S Corp or a C Corp. And then you're going to have a limited partnership with inside of an LLC as a limited partner in some cases or some type of joint venture agreement. But, yeah, you're definitely going to want to go with the LP, and I can help you with that. I've set quite a few of those up.
Cool. That's awesome. Okay. We've answered that. We've answered that already. Should each leg have a different name or just the main LLC with A, B, C? He's already answered that, Carolyn. You're going to do a one entity, and then it's going to be Series A, Series B, Series C, and then forth. In the question you've got here, Phil asked the question, who is the, on your example you just showed there, Scott, who is the trustee for 123 Main Street, and who's the beneficiary?
So the trustee and the beneficiary has to flow up. So the beneficiary in this case would actually be Series A, and you would actually be the trustee of the trust. And the beneficiary flows up.
Okay. Cool. Do you also do private placement memorandum filings for a fund?
Yes, I do those.
Okay. Cool. And Diane, can you do Series LLCs in Illinois?
Yeah. So I don't know off the top of my head if Illinois actually allows you to file a Series LLC. I want to say no. But in the event that they don't allow you to do, what we do is we file one in Texas, and then we use that LLC in Illinois.
Yeah, you can do it in Illinois, she just said. So didn't know if you were doing them up in that neck of the woods or not.
Yeah, it's really I file LLCs all throughout the country. The real truth of the matter is that they're not they're really easy to mess up in the filing. But once you're 20 states, you kind of get the hang of, okay, this is the way that everybody's Secretary of State's working.
That makes sense. All right. Question here. John asked the question here. Oh, hang on here. What if you live in California but only have notes outside of California? Does the Delaware DST cover you so you don't have to pay the franchise tax fee?
Yeah, the DST will cover you in that scenario. And more to the point on California, saying even if you had a Texas LLC and you're in California and that Texas LLC only owns assets in other states, just by proxy of you living in California and having an LLC, sometimes that they'll try to get you for that.
Right.
But you definitely, if you're in California, you want to have the DST.
Right. Question from Robert. Why do you need additional trust to hold the asset before it goes into the child LLC? The reason you need that, Robert, is because there's nothing that the holding company will technically own. All right. You want the LLC, the parent LLC is the kind of the pass through each series there for you. So it's there to protect you in case that operating company ever gets sold or ever gets sued, not sold. So, all right, let's see here. Nope, we got that. We already answered that. We've already answered that. Is there any case law that tests piercing series LLCs? Christopher asks.
Yeah, Christopher, I'm happy to post some of that up that we see. I haven't seen anything that allows you to. The only things that I've ever seen that allows you to pierce a series LLC is the same types of ways that you would pierce a traditional LLC, right? So like one of the traditional ways that people do that is that they start using the LLC funds as if it were a bank account. Instead of cutting themselves checks as income, they'll just go to their bank ATM and withdraw money. That's a really great way to pierce the corporate veil. You're going to have that same type of piercing that's going to occur inside of the series LLC.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about filing in Wyoming, somebody asks?
Sure, Wyoming's good.
Cool. So, Scott, the best number to reach you at there is Scott or the phone number is 512-757-3994. Also a text message sometimes because Scott does travel, especially if he's not doing extreme sports and climbing walls, right?
Yeah. No, I think everybody's going to have me on lockdown here for the next couple of months. I'm starting up a new fund in the Austin area, so I will be back in home base working hard on that. And for you guys, for Scott Carson's people, I'll give you guys all of my direct line. You can call me, you can text me, you can email me. I don't have the Instagram and tweeting capabilities of Mr. Carson over here, but you can always get a hold of me if you need me, directly through this webcast.
Scott is really fast about returning emails, and he's responsive, totally very responsive. Let's see, question here. Bob asked the question, generally speaking, what does an LLC owner need to do to remain compliant with IRS rules and not have the LLC be invalidated? Jesus, Bob.
Yeah, Bob, you should probably hire an attorney, man.
Yeah, Bob, that's a little bit longer than we can go through tonight. I'd suggest you go make an appointment with Scott and go get set one up there for you.
Yeah, you're gonna need something, and that also brings it to something that I also do with all of my clients is that I have a certain offering that I do, which I call the family office plan, which gives you a yearly review of your LLC to make sure that you're going to be compliant with any changes in the law. I serve as your registered agent to help you with any anonymity, as well as provide you with a couple of hours of ongoing legal support to review any contracts with you, consult with you. And I call it my family office. I charge $500 per year, which is a bargain in terms of what legal fees would cost to be able to have the same level of service. And I do that just because I want people to know that, it's one thing to set up a company. It's another thing to make sure you're running it correctly. And it's a third to make sure that you could rest easy at night knowing that you're going to be protected if the worst happens.
Wow. That is freaking phenomenal there, Scott. That's something you should have talked about more too, buddy.
Maybe cut that part out, put it in the very beginning.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's do that.
That's awesome here. Great pricing. Another webinar on that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I'll put up a YouTube video for you guys or something.
There you go. If I already have a Delaware Series LLC but don't have a trust, can you create just a trust for me?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so, Sharon, you just reach out to him, and he'll give you the price for that because that's going to be separate, obviously, for you. But probably pretty similar, though. Probably about the same pricing, though, huh, Scott? Because you still got to create the documents and stuff that goes into it, or no?
Well, just the trust documents in that case, right?
Okay.
If she already has a series LLC set up, it's going to be cheaper.
That's good. Yes, it does. All right. So awesome stuff. Great info. Scott, thank you for taking time out of your busy, hectic schedule. I know that you are having fun and being a trooper for jumping in here and helping out. And so I appreciate it a ton, man. I know that you're out having fun. I know when I'm on vacation, I don't usually like to be bothered, but I really, really appreciate it. I'm sure everybody here on the call definitely had got a lot about it because we're still sitting at close to what we've had the entire time. So a lot of people didn't jump off. They stayed on to the very end to get you. So there's his information, everybody. Make sure you take it down, 512-757-3994. His email is really easy, scott@royallegalsolutions.com. And Scott will take good care of you. He'll definitely give you his royal treatment. We've known each other for a while, and I'm glad to have Scott around. Scott set up one of these series LLCs for me just recently and doing a lot of other fun stuff together as well, too. So when you get back in town, give me a holler, buddy, and let's grab lunch or grab a drink or something again, all right?
All right, man. I'm down. Let's do it.
All right, guys. Have a great evening. Thanks for joining us on the Monday Note, and we will see you guys next Monday night. Hopefully for some of you guys in Houston, we'll see you tomorrow night at the Houston Real Estate Happy Hour from 7 to 9 o'clock. Otherwise, everybody, have a great week, and we'll see you all at the top. Great, and